Hello and welcome back to the fourth and final day of the Cheltenham Festival previews. It's myself, Dave Young, again joined by Will Smith. We're looking through all of the action on Friday, where the feature race being the Gold Cup is definitely open to some interpretation. So I'm keen to know Will's thoughts on that. Keen to know your thoughts, Will, on all the races for Friday, because it looks a pretty competitive day's racing. Some of the markets, I feel like even the Martin Pipe, the county hurdle would be another one I'd suggest as well. That some of these handicaps where at this stage we might have already seen a springer in the market, I think there's still plenty of horses that could be in contention. We're recording this on the Monday, so this will be published live on Wednesday. It'll be Wednesday lunchtime, but weights for the handicaps will be out by the time this comes out, but we won't know what those weights are. So some of those markets, I'm talking about the county and the Martin Pipe, may have adjusted a little bit in there, but I don't think there'll be too much change. Will, we've got a bit of an idea of what horses will be, and off the back of our opinions, and potentially if we cite some weight raises, I guess, for some of those horses from the other side of the sea, maybe the punters can still latch onto some stuff early off the back of watching this. But Will, we've had a good first few days with the preview. I'm saying that like the results have come in and we've ticked every winner, but they felt good to talk horses. It's always good with this. We appreciate your guys' interaction in the comments as well. There's been loads of good bits on the first day, so make sure you are dropping a comment below with anything you agree, disagree with, questions or horses that you fancy. We'll check those and respond to as many as we possibly can. Drop a like on the video, always helps. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But Will, let's get stuck into it. The Triumph Hurdle. It's changed complexion a little bit, the Triumph Hurdle, with the fact that Narciso isn't coming to this race now. We talked in the Anti-Post Insight episode that, I mean, he looked like a horse that was not one that we were trying to take on, but a horse that anything at the head of the market, you're trying to see, well, is there any reasons why this horse shouldn't be there? And it was hard to say he shouldn't be, but obviously now he's not running. That blows things quite wide open. And I think even when we spoke before, we probably both had like a bit of a mind on a horse. You'd think it would become clearer now that he's out of the race, given the fact that he's not in there to worry about. And you'd think that maybe actually the ones that we were considering that could have run close to Narciso could be the ones to side with now. But I don't think I'm any clearer as to who would win the Triumph at this stage. And the betting market would suggest something very similar as well. So we've got it said at the moment that Proactive 7-2 favourite. We've got Selma Devari in at 4-1, but more of a general 7-2 shot. Minella Studies in at 7-1. Maestro Conti's a top price 8-1, but a general 6-1. Monge 2's 8-1, and it's 10-1 and bigger the rest. So Will, keen to know your thoughts on this because the race complexions changed quite a lot since we last spoke about it.
Yeah, it has changed a lot. Obviously, Narciso coming out has made it wide open, really. And I think with him in it, I'd have been in a position where I was a little bit reluctant to take him on for all that it's a Triumph Hurdle. And we saw last year, 100-1 hot shot hurdle debutants can go and win it. So it's not cut and dried. Particularly at the minute, it feels like there's been slightly bigger fields in the Triumph in the last couple of years than has sometimes been the case, and that will definitely be the case this year because it's wide open. There's 6 or 7 horses quoted close to single figures here, so yeah, all up in the air to some degree. But the one that I think is, and we mentioned this a week or so ago in the shorter preview, the general preview, I think Minella Study is still quite significantly overpriced, really. He's 7-1 non-runner money back. He was only just a little bit bigger with Narciso in there. And I made the point that had he been, or would he have the name N. Henderson or W. Mullins next to his name as the trainer, then he's favourite now, isn't he? Without a shadow of a doubt. I know Selma Devari caught the eye in behind Narciso at the DRF, but on what Minella Study has done on the track in a couple of hurdle starts now, most notably over the course and distance of the Triumph Hurdle, where he beat a solid yardstick who's come out and absolutely bolted up next time. For me, he's a short price favourite if he's trained by one of those two. So it's that kind of situation that maybe the respect hasn't been afforded to the likes of Adam Nicol, who's a very, very good trainer with the string that he's got, and he's got a live candidate. And I think if you were pushing me to have a bet right now, then Minella Study at 7-1 each way, non-runner money back has to be the play. Selma Devari, you'd imagine, will probably come here now. She might well have gone to the Fred Winter, the Boodles, if Narciso was in there, depending on what mark she gets, of course. Proactive and Macho Man are interesting. Obviously, Proactive more so now because he's in the JP McManus silks, and he would probably look like the number one for him. Maestro Conti's a good horse as well, waiting to happen, or probably has already happened, but waiting to happen a bit more. So there's live contenders, definitely. But yeah, for me, Manila Study is just overpriced still, and probably will remain overpriced until the off.
Yeah. It's interesting as well because with these markets, we like to look at some of the ones in the betting without the favourites, don't we? And we get a bit of a view for what sort of price they might be. This is essentially now a betting without the favourite because he's no longer here. But it's different in my mind of how I would have probably perceived it. I would feel like if Narcisa Has was in here and they redid the book, I feel like most of them might be a little bit shorter towards the front of the market. And you're right about Manila Study as well, but that would be at final declarations. The prices would come in a bit. But yeah, still 7-1 looks quite good. There was a comment on the day one video about Ames that ran behind Manila Study. I think 129's his UK mark. And given the fact that he was close to Manila Study off of levels, whereas Winston Jr. Was in receipt of £7 and is rated actually a couple of pounds higher than that Ames, they were suggesting in the comments that it was remiss of us to not mention that horse. So there we go. We've mentioned that horse. And I agree as well. I did actually get Ames in the book off the back of that one. I think he's 10s for that Fred Winter. But yeah, that was a race that needed to do a bit more work in. I feel similarly with the Triumph that a part of me feels like I should do some more work in it, but I've spent enough time looking at it that I feel like nothing's going to change between now and the festival in terms of what the horses have actually done or the trajectory that you have to, in this instance, you have to assume that they're on rather than know that they're on, because some of the juveniles that start early in the season can continue to peak. Defi de Saul had 5 runs, I think, before he went on a Triumph and just got better and better. But there was the feeling around those horses that are maybe a bit more exposed that, well, have they already reached their ceiling? And some of them, it's not true, is it? They've still got as much to come as everything else. Selma de Vere is the one that I think it's really difficult with the Spring Juvenile for me to get out of my mind just all the memories of horses like Farclas and Mr. Adjudicator clashing against each other and then reversing the form at Cheltenham. I think this decade, I can't remember exactly how many there's been, but I feel like there's been like either 6, or there's been more than that. I think there's been nearly 7 or 8. I can find the figures. There's been quite a few winners from the Spring Juvenile, but most of them didn't win the Spring Juvenile. They've come from the also rans. And Selma de Vere was but quite a big price instilled in the market. There was only sort of nibbles of money there. And I know Narcisa has had her well covered, but she betted Monge too, which I didn't think she would do personally. I thought she might be like a never near a third and might be eye-catching in that front. And there was lots that was talked about in the post part of the race, but if you didn't watch it or you haven't watched the replays after, her jump at the second last made like 4 lengths on the field. And I know that she was racing in France and her last run for the other yard was in November, but she hasn't had that long at Willie Mullins for him to put his stamp on the horse. I don't think that she's not going to be able to improve from that run. And on figures what she's already done, given the fact she's going to get £7, I think she does very much set the standard. And I do expect that she will step forward as well. Like, it's not very many Willie Mullins horse that you'd see their very best at the first run they ever have, and then they don't step forward for it. So I feel like she's really obvious. My only, I guess, discomfort with it, which I need to look at as a positive, is I feel like she probably should be shorter if my thinking is accurate. She should be a 2-1 point now he's out, and she's not. And that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And Willie Mullins has talked about other horses. There was another JP horse that ran just this weekend that was quite impressive as a juvenile. And Frank Berry was saying, oh yeah, she really impresses. We didn't expect her to do that stuff. So the fact that Proactive's come in here is like the representative for those connections, yeah, it just makes me feel like maybe do they think she's not that good. But I felt similarly with Madborough when he did the same as well. Like the pecking order, Stormheart went off favourite. They don't definitely know where their pecking order is. And I think, from my mind, that Selma de Vere is the best of the Clasat and juveniles, and I think that might be enough for her to win this race. But it's a really good looking race. She's probably going to be hopefully a fair enough price, around about 4-1 on the day still. But there is still some time to go through with it. Looks like a race that I will be getting involved with, Will, but not with a massive degree of confidence. But then it's juveniles. We should be like that every year, shouldn't we? Because I really like the Lamba, and Poneros turned up. Thank you for mentioning that. So we've got Manila Study for you, Will. I think that's a fairly strong selection, isn't it? Especially from an each way perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely very keen on Manila Study.
Love that. And then I will definitely be keen on Selma de Vere. I mean, again, if she gets to like a 7-2, 4-1 on the day, and then even is there an extra place up for grabs, I think her running style and the way that she goes about things, I can't see her out the frame, so she might be one for some filthy each way bets on the final day. Right, well, the second race on the card, the County Hurdle, Dan Scout and Willie Mullins have absolutely farmed this. It's a really nice race, I think, because last year, I'm sure you were really sweet on the chances of Cargasi from like a little while out as well. And with some of those classy, keen horses and stuff, it goes to show the difference in like handicaps to a potential graded races, not
Yeah.
only from the field size, but how some horses are made to be in these big field handicaps. Mercy is the one that's been subject to support this year, like obviously similar collections or the same connections. The reason why I say similar connections is more just for the fact that it's not the same sort of profile as Cargate. It's almost because it's the same
Yeah.
connections. She's the one to land on. There's a few from the Clasutton string that I think would tick the boxes. We'll start with Charisma though, because Charisma's a 7-1 shot. Mercy is in at 7-1 top price, but general 6-1. Amsterdam's 10s or 12s. I started a joke. He's in the more battle favourite for that. 8-1, but as big as 12-1. Stormheart's 12-1. Tutti Quanti's 12-1. Rock Dino's 14s. It's bigger the rest of them, but Charisma was a horse that was beaten, and a lot of stick was given to the ride, saying that they didn't really try with the horse. And then she's come out and run all right after. And then Nikki Henderson's post-race comments were, "Oh, she's run really well. But she can't go out more than a couple of pounds for that."
Mm.
And I remember when Dame de Compagnie won the Coral Cup and they contested, didn't they, the collateral raise that was given in there.
Yeah.
I know this isn't the reason to be confident on horse, and I'm not confident on Charisma in the slightest, but his comments after that race were very much just like, well, she can't go up in the handicap, can she? So our job's been done. And it very much felt like that. So I can see why she sat where she is. I thought Carbu was interesting, but I didn't see enough last time out. When she had that comeback run, I thought it would be a better performance. I thought that Stormheart was an interesting horse, but I wonder if he's starting to look a little bit exposed now. If he did come here, I think Amsterdam would be seriously interesting, almost like Arctic Fire-esque of the times of the past. But I don't think there's enough juice in his price at 10 or 12-1, given the fact we don't know where he's definitely going to go. So I personally found this one as a tricky race. I think some of the money that's come for I started a joke, given the fact that he's going to go the more battle route, might be linked to the two of those things. And the fact that he's running so close to the festival, I'm not sure I'd want to take up the chance on him now at a 12-1 price. He'd be the sort of horse I'd want to sit back and watch, because that could be a loser before it's even run, I think, as far as I'm concerned. But I didn't have any real confidence in knowing who's going to win the county this year. So this is why I need you, Will. Who wins the county 2026?
I mean, wide open, obviously, as you'd expect, and it'll still be wide open on the day. The potential shorteners, like you said, you've mentioned Charisma and Mercia, are the obvious ones. If anything does win the more battle hurdle and attempts to win the valuable bonus by coming here, obviously I started a joke. There's one or two other entries as well that are in the more battle still that haven't yet been confirmed. We're talking at 10:15 a.m. on the Monday, so the confirmations close at noon today. Gavin Cromwell's 6.5 would be potentially a bit interesting for that if she were to go to Kelso and then to this, perhaps, or even just to this. Time will tell. But I think it's fascinating now with the angle that you have to have got 5 hurdle runs in to qualify for the race. They've obviously tried to weed out one or two of those potential future champion hurdlers running off marks in the high 130s, which is a shame, I think, in some respects, because that's the beauty of it. State Man and the like. If they pitch up here off a lenient mark, so be it. That's the beauty of a good trainer who is able to get a horse to progress to something like that level, and they start out in handicaps off a nice mark. But anyway, that's for another day. But it's been fascinating that, for me, Dan Skelton has... I mean, it's been a bit of a rush, which is a small bit of a worry. He's got 2 runs into Sinatra in February, just to make sure that he's got the 5 runs in here. On the figures, what he's done in a couple of races at Newbury behind Captain Hugo and Act of Innocence, his mark of 133 is about a stone wrong already, I think. Now, it could well be that he's even better in a big field as well. He's a novice, so he kind of lacks that I'll say experience level. He has got 5 hurdle runs in now, so maybe you could counteract it with that. He went to the Sydney Banks at Huntingdon behind Act of Innocence again, and he was a bit weak late on in the market, and he just wasn't quite ridden with that, with everything in mind, if you know what I mean. It was sort of kept maybe towards the inside on slightly softer ground, and when it became clear that he wasn't going to win, he wasn't being given a hard time. And then the Skeltons found a lovely opportunity for him to go and get the 5th run in, get a win, and also not have too much of a hard race at Warwick in this week, where he cantered all over a very good horse called Four Springs.
Yeah.
For me, you'd like to hear some bullish vibes in the next week or so, because he has had a busy time of things. But it's fascinating. I mean, Dan Skelton has a few other entries in the race, the likes of Favois, and one or two others who have been there and done it a bit. They're not the classic Dan Skelton winner of this race now, for all that Favois has done before. So I'd be very keen on Sinatra if there's positive vibes around how he is in the next couple of weeks or so. If there's a small bit of market support strength behind him, then I'll probably try and jump on that bandwagon before it gets a bit too too all encompassing and he suddenly gets slashed to favourite, because he's a very, very, very good horse, and he'd have a place in some of those Grade 1 novices, the Supreme and the Aintree Top Novices Hurdle. He wouldn't be out of place in those races.
No, definitely not. I mean, you look at the Dovecote, there were horses in there. The highest rated runner in that was only 130. He's the type of horse that probably could have gone and run well in a race like that, but they've opted to come down this route. So interesting one, isn't it? And like you say, with the fact that he is the one in the market, sat at 14s, I mean, there's been a bit of a nibble for him already, but he's the one that you look at and think, well, he probably will go offshore, even just for the Dan Skelton thing. That there is the value to be had, regardless of whether he, I guess, performs. I think that was Live Conti, wasn't it? One they'd sort of cited as the one to be the county hurdle horse, and then he's met with the setback, and they've got the plan B. But you mentioned some of Dan Skelton's winners of this race in the past. They were plan Bs as well. Like, it's not always been his first string, is it? And they've been big price winners in there as well. So it may have been the case that Sinatra was on the back burner for this race, or maybe they thought, we'll win a big handicap, the Great Wood, at the start of the year next year, and they just had to bring that plan forward. But he definitely does look like a well-handicapped horse. So good mention for that one, Will. It's good to have you on here, because you're helping me navigate some of these races. They're hard with some of those, with the double entries, especially from a distance perspective. But I do feel like the county hurdle winner should be there to be found, and hopefully Will's just done that for us. A race that I can tell you the winner in, Will, which shouldn't take very long to preview, the Mare's Chase. I do love this race, to be fair. I semi-wish it was a bit more competitive some seasons, because I feel like it does tend to be a result that you can whittle down to a couple or a few runners, and it tends to be one of those horses that does it. There can be money that comes in for horses at the later stages if the ground changes, that can make a bit of a difference in there, especially when they're strings from the same yard. But this year just looks the most straightforward result for me that I've possibly seen. And when we talk about like value and price in there, of course, it's always in the eye of the beholder, and I get that there's risks attached and all those things with every single horse that's in there. But for me, when we looked at the Mare's Hurdle, and I think it's a straight shootout between Lossiemouth and Woodhoo, and I think Woodhoo's on a lovely upward curve. I don't think she's quite there yet with Lossiemouth, but if she was able to beat Lossiemouth, it wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world, because it's optimum trip for both of them. They're going to have the right conditions. We know they love Cheltenham, so it's a fair game as far as I'm concerned. I look at this Mare's Chase, Will. Dino Blue a couple of years ago just didn't win because Mark Walsh got the other jockey got first run on Mark Walsh, and I pinpointed that in the year that happened, and it frustrated me because I think the best horse got beat. But then last year, it looked like Mark Walsh either watched the preview or just agreed with me in the fact that he needed to pinch the rail on the inside as they turned for home. He needs to shoot off straight, and then he got the job done. And I know Allegory Devassi got beat, but Allegory Devassi fell. But Dino Blue had her well covered. And as far as I'm concerned, there's not an Allegory Devassi standard mare in contention, with a view that this would actually be their optimum trip. I know that's probably harsh saying that about Panic Attack, given she won the Paddy Power Gold Cup, but she also won a Coral Gold Cup at Newbury, which I don't think would translate to her being graded class over this particular distance. She's obviously got the entry in the Grand National, and I know that can happen with other horses that potentially that they can use this as a bit of a stepping stone for middle distance trips, like Back Me a Sack Me, didn't he? Won over 2 mile 5, he's going to go to a National 1 chase. But Dino Blue is like a 2.5 miler. She's good at Cheltenham. I mean, she's arguably like a 2 mile 2 furlong mare, but she's 7-4 in this non-runner money back. She's definitely going for the race. She's had exactly the same preps as she had last season in the fact of the timings of the run. But this year's performances have actually been much better. Last year, she came in off the back of 2 runs in Christmas where she was beaten, and I had to make a little bit of excuses for her on both of those. But she's just been better this season. So I think she comes in off as good a form as she's ever been in. I think she'll put in a bigger career figure this time around than she's ever done before. And while I do respect Spindlebury and all the ones that were next to her name, she's just not as good as Dino Blue. She's not. I don't think she's done anything really in the book that would suggest that she can mix it with her. She's got to give Dino Blue weight as well in this because of the way that things are sat out on that front of it. And then they ran her over 3 miles last time. admittedly she pulled up and they might have minded her after that, but I don't think that's the stepping stone to coming into winning a mare's chase. So I respect where she is in the market. I also respect the fact that I could be completely and utterly wrong, and Spindleberry could be this out of the ordinary worldy thing. I could be wrong about Panic Attack. She could just be in the form of her life, and she may have been hiding, and now she's just found a new lease of life, and she could find the half a stone or £10 that she needs. And I also accept the fact that Dino Blue could just smash a fence because she's got a bit of that in her, isn't she? And that could cost her the race. But I think with that in mind, if Dino Blue gets a clear round, she definitely wins, in my opinion. If she even makes a little bit of a hint of a mistake, I still don't think that'll be enough to see her get beat. So I think 7-4 Dino Blue is a ridiculous price. I would have her much shorter. Like, I'd have her pushing for going odds on in this race personally. So yeah, I'm fair. Like, this should be one of my stronger fancies for the whole entire week, to be fair, Will. So I feel like it's a fairly open and shut case in there. There are a few more horses that I haven't mentioned. There's a few horses I'm maybe not giving the same respect to, but just on figures and what she's done, surely Dino Blue's just a class above the rest of these.
Yeah, no, she is. I always had her down as a very speedy type, which she is, and possibly with that in mind, that 2 miles actually is historically been her best trip. But she's equally very, very good and better than those horses over further, so she can travel within her comfort zone. So the stamina element doesn't get drawn out of her, which is what I think happened 2 years ago to some degree. She probably didn't have the run of the race to some degree as well, but she was taking on a mare, Limerick Lace, who at that time was absolutely at her peak, strong stayer at 2.5 miles. I mean, they went for the Grand National the run after, and was given a brilliant ride by Keith Donoghue on the day. So the only way Dino Blue gets beat for me is if there's a horse that's close to similar level to her, so has to be up to nearly the kind of 160 range, 155 range, and then able to draw out her stamina. Is there a horse in here with that kind of profile? I think if there was one that might just come up close to that, it could potentially be Calaconti. I'm not going to suggest that she's a standout bet. She's probably an each way price at 10-1, 12-1 now, non-runner money back. This is her only entry at the festival. She's been kept lightly raced this year, so I think it's probably a plan to get her to the festival. She was a couple of seasons ago in a juvenile season. She was potentially going to go to the Triumph Hurdle, but then had a bit of a setback, so she didn't make it that year. And then last year was a bit of a rush to get her to the Mares Hurdle, and again didn't quite run up to speed. But she's been really good so far this year. I mean, she beat Cargese by 16 lengths. She was 5 lengths off 6 Mile Bridge at Sandown, which I think is pretty sneakily strong form actually. And she never quite got into a rhythm that day on that ground. I think she's better on a spring surface. She doesn't want fast ground by any stretch, but just a normal good to soft surface. So if there was one horse that could, if Jack Kennedy was able to ride the right kind of race and just draw out Dino Blue's stamina enough without going to the well too much on Calaconti, then I think she could be the one that might give Dino Blue the most to think about. I'd respect Panic Attack, definitely. Respect Spindleberry as well. But I do think they're both horses that are suited by perhaps a bit further. Well, certainly in Panic Attack, I think she's going to be a live player in something like the Grand National, of course. But and Spindleberry, I think, would need very, very testing ground to be seen to best effect. And it was, obviously not the ideal prep, running in what was a pretty brutal Irish Gold Cup, of course, as well. So, yeah, Calaconti might be the danger and is fresher than most.
Yeah, fair enough, Will. And I think I really feel like, because I really fancy Dino Blue, obviously people can tell, but that's what it is on that his own right. It's another race where I'll have to stop myself doing it because I don't want to have two different types of bets in the same race when I fancy one in there. But I feel like once you take Dino Blue out of this, I look at Spindleberry and Panic Attack being the next couple in there and think, I don't even think they'd win without Dino Blue. Like, there's got to be something in there for a betting without Dino Blue type bet as well. So I think this is a cracking market to get stuck into as we get final declarations. But there is still that air, isn't there, of which horses definitely even turn up in it. So it'll be interesting to see the final field. I do think as that happens, though, more horses than not potentially could fall by the wayside, which means I think Dino Blue's price will collapse. She's 11-8 with a few firms. I see that as the price where she should be with a non-money back market or an anti-post market. So, yeah, I'm sweet on Dino Blue. I was last year, will be this year. And, fingers crossed she can just keep her mistakes to a minimum because she does look like she's maturing and getting better on that front. But I think that just we would know it of all the horses, don't we? The ones that can smash for a fence like she did in the Grand Annual. If you know they've got it in their locker, then you're never going to shake that from your mind, are you? We said it enough with Constitution Hill saying that his jumping still got to be a worry. Hers is to some small degree that, but yeah, I think she's an absolute good thing. Right, moving on to the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. Will, we've got good novice hurdle divisions this season, as far as I'm concerned. I think for a couple of years we've had where it's been a bit almost disappointing, almost underwhelming. But I think across all three of them, it feels like we've got some depth, and it also feels like we've got a lot of horses that are obvious at the trips that they should be. So I feel like the Supreme horses, we've got a lot of 2-milers in there, and some of them might just tweak trip just because they want to dodge certain horses. I think a lot of the Turners horses are genuine 2.5-milers at this stage of their careers, which is good. And I think the same with the Albert Bartlett. I think there's a bunch of horses here that you shouldn't have question marks about whether they're going to drop back to the Turners because this is their trip. However, in saying that, the current market leader, Dr. Steinberg, there is wonder and concern about whether he might drop back to the Turners. So he's in at 3-1 top price at the head of the market. We've got the Devil You Know, who's slowly just shortening every single week. He's down to 6-1 now, second favourite. No drama this end. He won't be coming here, but he's in at 8-1 just in case he switched for the non-runner money back markets. We've got Espresso Milan, 12-1 shot. Sortudo's 14, Spinning the Yarns 14s, Kazansky's 16s, and then it's bigger. The rest of those. I mean, Apache Tribe is actually about 12s or 14s. He's one that's been mentioned in the comments already as a live one for this particular race. But, well, I think this looks a good race. We know historically it has been one where you can find something at a bit of a price that could go well. I guess the obvious starting point is with Dr. Steinberg. Willie Mullins has said that he's worried about him settling, which I feel like if Willie says it out loud, I don't care what anyone else says. Willie's going to make the decisions and probably knows best. Paul Townend's convinced that he'll be able to settle the horse. I feel like with Final Demand last year, Final Demand should have gone to the Albert Bartlett. Whether it'd have made a difference to where he finished or not, I don't know. And I know they want to mind him for their futures. But do you? So I know it's a difficult question to pitch to you, and I'm sorry for doing it. But do you think Dr. Steinberg comes to the Albert Bartlett?
I wouldn't be guaranteed that. I think a lot of this depends on how Ruby Walsh-like Paul Townend can be in terms of saying the right thing at the right time to angle horses so that he has a good ride in each race. That was something Ruby Walsh was brilliant at, to be able to make sure that he had a almost close to a favourite's chance in every race. So if that was the case, if Paul Townend felt there was a good horse for the Turners, something like a Sortudo maybe, or a King Rasco Grey stepping up in trip, if he felt that that was a good chance in the Turners, then he might well try and suggest that, okay, I'll be able to settle Dr. Steinberg in the Albert Bartlett, because ultimately he's a very, very good horse. And if I can get him to settle, then his class might carry him through. So that's probably the conversations that are being had. I think, all things being equal, and if he were mine, I'd probably be running in the Turners as long as the ground wasn't very, very quick, because he looked like there was more emphasis on his speed and his willingness to go a little bit quicker than there was on the stamina element to his ability. Not to say he won't stay, but I just think that he might be happier going a little bit quicker over shorter. And the Albert Bartlett, don't forget, on the new track, 3 miles and a bit, and that run from 2 out to the line, that draws stamina out like no other race. And that's why we see so many big priced winners and placed horses, because it really is just such a unique test and a type of test that none of these horses will have had before. The only horse that has had something close to it and really sort of come through with flying colours is the horse that you mentioned there, who's being sort of steadily nibbled in the market, the Devil You Know, because the way he won the River Don at Doncaster was, to me, everything you need in an Albert Bartlett horse. 3 miles half a furlong at Doncaster in a really well-run race with plenty of good novices pushing on. And he just, travelled really nicely, came through, stretched clear of a very, very good horse as well in second, Country Code. And I know he's a very good horse because I backed him each way that day. And I was getting very, very hopeful until I saw the Devil You Know, Sean O'Keefe, swinging away. I thought, oh no, we bumped into one here. So he's the one that, he's the standard setter for me. Actually, I think he's done more to suggest that he should be favourite ahead of this. Favourite for this particular assignment ahead of what Dr. Steinberg has done. So for me, if you were having a bet right now, the Devil You Know would be it. I know he's a shorter price, even than he was a couple of days ago, because everyone's chipping away. And I think that's right. I think he should probably be favourite, the Devil You Know. Yeah, and of those, like obviously at bigger prices as well, it's a race that does throw up plenty of those at bigger prices. I mentioned in the day two preview for the Turners that I've got loads on the radar at kind of 40 to 1 plus. I actually don't really have too many for the Albert Bartlett that's kind of stand out to me as being an obvious play at a bigger price. So I'm going to have to do a bit more work on that. I'm doing something wrong there because surely there'll be two or three that run well at wild odds. Just don't know what they are at the minute.
Yeah, I could give you a couple. I think are worth interest, or worth a small interest at bigger prices at the moment. Will
Yeah,
so the Dr. Steinberg is wrecking my brains because I think he should come here. I think he would win this if he does. And with the Devil, I think the reason they're sat where they are is because Dr. Steinberg put him in his place, didn't he, a couple of runs ago? But that was over 2 mile forward. I know it was on bad ground, and
improved
even in that,
it.
yeah, when you watch over the finish of that one, he's done it because it's over the distance, isn't he? And then the Devil, the way that he's finished at the end, you'd think if they had to go for longer, it isn't an insurmountable sort of result in there, is there? So yeah, I see where they're sat in there. I don't know. It's a tricky one. I've always looked back when like Kilbrick and Storm won this, and you go back to, what I mean, Harry. There's a lot of horses that have got like a bit of speed about them that go and win this. A lot of horses start at 2 miles and then maybe just come up short because they're not quite quick enough, but they're good enough to mix it with some nice horses. So it's a real blend of a race, and it keeps changing, doesn't it? You used to have the second season novices or the ones that had loads of hurdle experience, and now the profile goes back to being you just need to be a novice hurdler that's just quite good. So I'm excited about it. I do think like Dr. Steinberg is the standing dish for this. I don't know if he'd be the same as a Santini because their running style is very different, but he feels a little bit like he could be a Santini type one where he's clearly a really nice horse. He's going to run well. He might run into a place, but there could be something that goes and beats him just because they're on it at the moment. The two that are interesting for me, Cryptic Jim's shortening up a bit too much for me. He could go Turners. He could come here. I know the connections think that he's a really nice horse. He's a 33 to 1 pote of a couple of firms, but he's as low as 20 to 1, which I think's too short. So he's one. Again, when I mentioned horses like Kilbrick and Storm, I backed him anti-post at 20s and he's available at 25s and he's available at 50s on the day. So some of the Bartlett lurkers are worth waiting with. I think even Vanillier, when he won at a big price, was bigger in the final declaration market than he was with the anti-post. But I think Cryptic Jim's a nice horse. It was the marred race, wasn't it, with all the potholes at Cheltenham where you couldn't really see what happened and people were questioning the photo finish. You couldn't see what it was in there. But again, I think he's the type of horse that shows that he's got enough speed to mix it at shorter distances, but I think this horse needs a trip. So I'd be interested to see how things pan out of him. He's got bumper form. It's quite a good bumper behind that Idaho Sun, which is, I don't know if it's the same bumper that Sinatra ran in, but Sinatra's got the bumper form behind Idaho Sun as well. Like I feel like they're in and around the same sort of molds of like nice types. I think Cryptic Jim could go well for stepping up in trip. The fact that they're switching, it could be a Turners, it could be an Albert Bartlett thing, does concern me. I'd rather the trainers just say he's this type of horse because I think to win these races, you do need to be that type of horse. The other one, though, I think is Mondui Boy, who was so good at Ascot. He was actually smashed in the bet in there. They talked about him after his first run at Ludlow, where they were just like, I don't know whether Cheltenham and Aintree, or Cheltenham might come too soon. He could be an Aintree horse. But I fancied him in that Ascot race. I fancied him a bit on what he did at Ludlow, a bit of his back form because he's got some good bumper form over in Ireland. But a part of it was the confidence coming from Ben Paulin, and you have to be a bit careful with that yard because he'll be really bullish about lots of horses that he'll get wrong, but he'll equally be bullish about horses that he'll get right. So it's a bit of a pinch of salt thing there. But the way that he was bet and the way that he won the race, he clearly is a very good horse. I think that's put him in the picture for coming to an Albert Bartlett now, even though they potentially were thinking of waiting for Aintree. And they might do that. They might wait for the 3 mile at Aintree instead. But I think he's on a steep enough upward trajectory. He just had a little bit of a setback, which meant he couldn't be seen as soon. I think if he'd have had 3 runs coming into this, he's already rated 134. I think he'd already be in the 140s. And it might be that he needed that lack of experience means that he won't be quite as high as he needs to be to go and win an Albert Bartlett. But he's still available at 33 to 1 for this race. And I think that is criminal. So I think Mondui Boy should be on people's minds anyway for this particular race. Whether he definitely comes in or not, I don't know. But he feels like the type of horse, again, the Ben Paulin, Ben Jones, Jukebox Man, Gold Cup, everything just points to the fact that, especially if Ben Paulin has a couple of winners in the week, which I'm sure he will with the form that he's been in, he looks like he could end up being an obvious shortener. And I don't think it's too tricky to make a case that he's overpriced. So it's a good looking race. I like Dr. Steinberg. If Dr. Steinberg didn't come in, Will, and Willie Mullins has got Espresso Milan as the next one, he's like a 12 to 1 poke. I know we've talked a lot about the Albert Bartlett, but did you have any view on that horse? Because I wondered whether he might be the one at 12 to 1 if Dr. Steinberg doesn't come, could end up being an obvious shortener.
Yeah, no, I think he could. He's bred very much for stamina, and he's suggested that stamina is his strong point as well. In his bumpers, you mentioned that Punchestown bumper that reads pretty well. Mondui Boy is obviously in there. Ahead behind him was Espresso Milan, wasn't he? In behind the
Yep.
likes of Soldier Milan,
Yep.
King Vasco Gray, and one or two others. Yeah, and what he's done over hurdles, Espresso Milan as well, hasn't done much wrong, really, has he? The way he won at Thurles, beating Manila Emperor, I thought was a pretty impressive performance. Did all he had to do. So yeah, he looks like an obvious type. And I guess again, it's Paul Townend. If he would rather ride Dr. Steinberg and allow him to use his pace in the turners, and then he feels Espresso Milan is on an upward curve enough to go to this, then he might well talk Willie Mullins and connections into that. I think with regards to these horses, it really is what Paul Townend feels he can do, and Willie Mullins places a lot of trust in that. So yeah, time will tell on that perspective.
Cracking race.
Got Paul Townend's number, then he's probably the best man to ask.
Yeah, we need to get him in a WhatsApp group, don't we? It'd be the dream to have a little line in with him. But I love this. Honestly, I could do a 45-minute preview just on the Albert Bartlett because it is always a deep one. Loads of horses we haven't mentioned. Spinning a Yarn's been getting lots of mentions. Apache Tribe, like I say, was mentioned in the comments. Kazansky, I know Gordon Elliott said he's coming here. He's a very profile horse, this Kazansky. Didn't get the qualifying run for the Martin Pipe. Gordon said that in a preview that he would have preferred to have got him as a pipe horse, but the owners wanted to run in the Albert Bartlett's basically what he said in a preview. So when that sort of things are said, I don't mean that Gordon Elliott's not going to try over the horse because he's annoyed that he's not gone to the pipe. But if he thinks he's a pipe horse for this season and he's running the Albert Bartlett, I just don't think the two can translate. I know we get your like Sade Chomps and stuff that are in the Martin Pipes that will end up being like a Gold Cup horse, but they've got to be ready for it at the time, haven't they? So I like Kazansky, but just thought it was worth mentioning that. Mention most of the field in there, Will. Conviction. Yeah, we sure want it. We'll crop any of the clips of any of the names and then we can say, we mentioned them, so we're on that. But with that said, we do have the link in the description to the Which Bookie website where all of our final selections will come up. Any anti-post bets that Will's already placed or that do come up before final decks will be available to find like somewhere through that link too. Right, Will, we're on to the big one though, the Gold Cup. This is a cracking Gold Cup. And it's not that they've been disappointing the last few years because we've seen Galopin Des Champs running. And then we've obviously seen him get the upset last year and there's been some good races prior. But this is a Gold Cup this year that genuinely I could make a case for quite a few horses, whereas in previous years I've just found more negatives than positives for lots of those, and it's proved to be right. Like Galopin Des Champs has been the standing dish, isn't he? And then I know the way you're thinking was probably the obvious danger last year, so it was fairly easy to whittle it down to 2, and it worked out to be that way. How do you whittle this one down to 2, Will? Because we've got Django Bay head of the market 9-2, Gaelic Warriors 6-1, but we don't definitely know where he's going to go. The Jukebox Man 6-1, Galopin Des Champs 8-1, Haiti Couleurs 8-1. I know the way you're thinking's 14-1. Now Factorfile needs to be supplemented for this race, so he's not on the list of betting odds within there. I can't remember what his top price is, but he'll be somewhere close to 4-1. I would have thought via the favouritism. So with that said, both Gaelic Warrior and Factorfile for me would have a place in a Gold Cup, given what happened in their last run. But we don't know if they're both going to run. The feeling is that one of them won't. But we don't know how that's going to pan. We talked before, didn't we, about the exchange markets not really giving us any clues on that. But I guess we'd have to assume that one or both of them would be in here. But even if we look away from those ones, Django Bay, the Jukebox Man, Galopin Des Champs, Haiti Couleurs, I know the way you're thinking, maybe spinning back into a bit of form. Spillane's Tower might not be the one, but, coming here on a bit more of an upward curve than he had been before. Lots of horses to talk about in here. So I'll leave the floor to you in this one, Will, because I'm struggling in the Gold Cup to have any conviction.
Yeah, I mean, a lot in terms of the market setup, a lot depends, doesn't it, on Factorfile and Gallic Warrior, what they do. I think in respect to all of the other horses, we know they're coming here, all things being equal. I do think whichever one of them runs in here, if one of them does, or indeed both, if both do, I think I would be inclined to look elsewhere from a stamina perspective for both of them. I'm not suggesting they're not, cast iron guaranteed stayers, but I think, they're. I mean, Factorfile, we saw it many times, obviously in the Ryanair last year. Gallic Warrior, we saw it in the Irish Gold Cup, and Factorfile in the Irish Gold Cup as well. It's their pace that sets them apart. It's their ability to travel at that higher cruising speed than other horses. And 3 miles at Leopardstown, yes, it was very heavy ground, but that is different to 3 miles, 2.5 at Cheltenham on a more undulating track. Now, Factorfile has showed himself to be well suited to Cheltenham. Absolutely fine with that. Gallic Warrior is obviously a Cheltenham Festival winner himself as well, so fine with that. But just, those final couple of furlongs and the final fence and that final climb, it does seem to just go into that last 2% that that isn't there in other races. So for me, I'd probably be happy to let both of them or either of them win if they did run without any support. I think you're then looking obviously at the likes of Django Bay and the Jukebox Man, who are improving horses. Obviously, fought out the finish of the King George, for all that Django Bay was only fourth, but he wasn't beaten far at all, was he? I think Cheltenham could suit Django Bay a little bit more than Kempton did. Jukebox Man has been second in an Albert. Bartlett just got chinned late on. I wouldn't have too much doubts about either of their stamina. I think the doubt comes with them is if Factor File is in there and he goes that really good gallop that he did at Leopardstown and then able to maintain it, are those two going to have anything left having travelled at that speed? That's the quandary for me with them. Galopin Des Champs, the quandary is that top notch performance quite still there like it has been? He's run really well on his two starts this year, and if he wasn't a dual Gold Cup winner beforehand, and he's run those two races, you're talking about him in completely different terms to what we were talking about. Everyone's kind of discounted him because he's not at the level that he was, but actually it's still a really high level. Cheap pieces apparently could squeeze out a little bit more for him, so he's a massive player, obviously. That goes without saying, doesn't it? And then I kind of come to the one that I think is potentially the one that could have every attribute suited to a Gold Cup and every angle covered, if you know what I mean, apart from that he hasn't had a performance yet that shows himself to be at that very top level. And this is Haiti Couleur I'm talking about. But I think watching him and just using a little bit of intuition and a few facts and figures, he seems to be a better horse when he's pushed on, when he's, on the front end in some of those races, the Irish National, the Denman Chase, the Welsh National, he's always there pushing things on. And it's almost like he wants horses pushing him forward. Every time that Sean Bowen has ridden him and he's found that little bit extra at stages of the races, it's when other horses have come to him and he's actually pushed on again. I mean, you saw it in the Welsh National. He was idling massively there and he felt the horse come to him and he just picked up again. So I wonder in a Gold Cup where, if he's somewhere prominent, doesn't have to lead, but if he's somewhere prominent being pushed on by good horses, could that take his performance to a level that we haven't seen before? And I for me, would rather side with a horse priced up slightly bigger that I think could have that in his locker. Than something where I think there are tangible doubts about one or two of the others. I think with Haiti Couleur, in my mind, I don't doubt the fact that Gold Cup could produce a career best performance. That's the way I'm looking at it. So I think if I were to have a bet right now, and he's obviously in the anti-post locker, Haiti Couleur from a little bit earlier on at, I think, 20-25 to 1, I'd still be keen on backing him right now at sort of 8 to 1, 9 to 1, non-runner money back. I think that's a live player and a good price.
Yeah. It's crazy to think as well, isn't it? I remember the Betfair Chase defeat. That's the only time that he's not completed over fences, but he's got 8 runs over fences, 6 wins in a second. Like he's a formidable horse. And like you say, the way that he's going through the ranks, that's my. I do like him. I definitely think he's got a proper chance. That's my only small, tiny reservation with him. That there's something in a Gold Cup which I don't think gets talked about as much in some of the other chase races, but like jostling for the early position in the Gold Cup's mad, isn't it? And there's been the year that Galopin Des Champs won and Jerry Colomb was second. Jerry Colomb got put sideways at the start of it. We've had horses that get unseated at the start. I wonder whether with Haiti Couleur, because it was only a small field at Haydock, but got shuffled back at the start of things and wasn't maybe as prominent. That would be the only thing that would worry me about Haiti Couleur, is that if he didn't manage to secure a good position early, he's in the back of horses. And I mean, Sean Bowen's as cool as a cucumber, so he would be fine, wouldn't he? But you'd want to see Haiti Couleur's right up there, wouldn't you, after a couple of fences?
Definitely, yeah. So I can give you a reason for that and put your mind at ease with that. So he came back from Haydock. It was 2 weeks after Newbury, and he came back, and Rebecca Curtis was well documented saying he's got a niggle in his back. That he just wasn't right. And actually, if you watch him at the start of the National Hunt Chase, the Irish National, and then subsequently at the Welsh National, I mean, he's like a bull in a china shop. He is ready to go, literally ready to take on the world. And the Irish National was, there was no way, if you didn't know anything about any of the horses there, you watch the prelims and the start of the Irish National and you see Haiti Couleur. I mean, if you're an in-running punter or a punter that plays on the exchange just beforehand, you're laying the teeth off of him without a shadow of a doubt. He just looks like, for a horse that's about to try and run 3 3/4 miles and stay on soft ground, he just doesn't look like he should. Whereas at Haydock, Sean Bowen couldn't get him to line up. He knew that there was something niggling him, irking him. In a small field, if that was him at his peak, he'd have been 3 lengths clear before the flag had been
Yeah.
raised. So I genuinely think there is a huge excuse for that performance. And a lot of people will say that was his only attempt in a proper Grade 1. Fair enough, but he wasn't the horse that we know he is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that. And I think it's just worth, like viewing that, isn't it? And it's good you've given the explanation for that at Haydock as well. And it'll be that he'll love the processions in front of the stands when he walks in front of people, all the hype that goes before it. But it still does boil down. It's crazy the start of the Gold Cup that you've literally got up as they rush to that first fence and then in between the first and second fence, jostling for position and getting in there can make a bit of a difference. I think it's just such a good looking race, isn't it? Django Bay, I think. Definitely, the way I would sit through this, I would say probably warrants favouritism, but more so for the fact that we definitely know he's coming here. Factorfile not even getting an entry in the Gold Cup, despite last year being talked about as a Gold Cup horse, but then only went to the Ryanair. It just feels a bit strange. I don't think it is the case because I don't think Willie's this type of person, but it's almost like they said, didn't they, before he won the Brown Advisory, that he was a Gold Cup horse in waiting, and it's almost a bit like, well, we said that now, so we're going to have to prove it at some point. But he's still so young, isn't he? You wonder whether this is the time to roll the dice or not. So it's just all that uncertainty about him. I don't feel like you can be uncertain about a horse going into a Gold Cup. Like, you've got to be extra confident. I know this is definitely it needs to be an obvious track. And even with, I know the way you're thinking last year, I know he had to be supplemented, but there was no questions after what he did in his prior run to be supplemented that he wasn't going to be. It was a case of, well, yeah, he'll be in, wasn't it? And it wasn't a case of maybe we'll save him for another meeting or we'll run him in a different race. I just feel like to win a Gold Cup, you need to be seen as that Gold Cup horse. And I guess there's small elements with me, with Django Bay as well, and potentially even the Jukebox Man, that I do agree with you. I don't doubt their stamina, but a small part of me looks at both of those and thinks I'd fancy them in the Ryanair. Like, if you had Factorfile, Gaelic Warrior, Django Bay, the Jukebox Man, and the Ryanair, that would be an absolute cracker of a race. And then you could leave Haiti Couleurs, Galopin de Champs, I know the way you're thinking, to run in a Gold Cup, and we can have the tri-cast, we can get it nailed in all of them. But that's the beauty of it. The Ryanair isn't detracting from the Gold Cup, which people were worried about before, weren't they? It's sat exactly as it should be. I'm really excited about this one. I don't know how I'm going to play it, to be honest with you. I liked Gaelic Warrior at the start of the season. The fact that they might send him to the Ryanair is a big negative for me. But if they decide not to, I would see that as a massive stamp of confidence in him. The fact that, I know the Factor-File decision will be made outside of Classatin, but if they do still decide that Gaelic Warrior can come to this race, I'd see that as a massive vote of confidence. But 6-1 about him is plenty short enough for a horse that we know can be keen in these races as well. So real hard Gold Cup. I've never, ever, ever been really confident in a Gold Cup horse, and it took me a long while. Native River was my first winner of it for like 20 years, despite you look at the names list that are on there. You think, how have I not found one of them? But maybe lack of confidence, but we are where we are. So Haiti Couleurs would definitely be yours for the Gold Cup, right, at this stage?
Yeah, I think so. I've always long felt that he's the right type for it, and I get the fact there's some very, very high class horses in the race, but kind of had the view that, and taken the view from a long while out, that he genuinely could be this class of horse, and he's got a good chance to prove it. And this is what it's about. You make an opinion on a horse from an early stage and try and get a price, based on that opinion. And I don't think I've seen anything that dissuades me from that opinion at this stage. Happy to be proved wrong. If I'm proved wrong, fine. But
well, that's it. Because I put up Gaelic Warrior earlier in the season. I think maybe 12s, 14s, or 16s. It was double figure price anyway, with the view that he was favourite for a King George. But I have seen the King George run where he was maybe a little bit unlucky with the Paul Town and like jostling for his whip a little bit. But then the run again after, you look at it and just think there's enough in there to make you have more question marks about Gaelic Warrior now that he's shown stuff, rather than being like, well, those questions have definitely been answered about him. So I hear you on that one. And I do, the National Hunt Chase is like a lovely prep towards a Gold Cup, isn't it? It would be better if there was more horses that could progress like Haiti Couleurs has done. But like you say, he just seems to be better in the better races that he runs in. And this will obviously be the best race he's run in. So as you say, it will bring out a career best. And what he's currently already done, he's not got that much to find, has he? He's posted the same figures as Galopin de Champs done this season, but he's on that upward curve, isn't he? So I'm excited about it. Right, let's move on. I mean, I should commit to something that I'd fancy in there, but I'd say if I had to have a free bet right now, I'd probably stick it on Django Bay because I really do like the horse. I think he's quite nice. I don't know. I don't think he'd be like a never near a third or something, but I feel like there's a few that will have to unfortunately be unlucky losers in here, aren't there? So yeah, lukewarm on the Gold Cup, but check the column out on the day because there's no doubt I'll find something in there when we find out the final fields. Right, the Hunter Chase will, the 440. I mean, we don't know who's running in this one. It's possible entries at this stage, and there's horses that need to do bits in there. So I don't know how much we can talk about this one. Wonderwall obviously took the race last year. It's on the lines coming back for, I don't know, must feel like his 50th attempt at the race. He's an absolute rogue, isn't he? I love him and I hate him at the same time as well because he's a horse that I'll get in the book for this race. He might be in a few multiples that roll through to Friday, and then he's always going for a couple of quid and then looks like he's going to win and then doesn't. They said they're going to run him in another point-to-point, I think Emmett Mullins mentioned, just to try and do something a bit different with him because he's got his own ideas about doing things. They're going to try and change things up, but I'd imagine that a horse gets more stubborn the older they get rather than like they're more likely to be changeable. So it concerns me about him with that, but we know that like his ability's there for all to see. There was a couple that were interesting outside of, I guess, the obvious ones. Hunter's Yarn was a horse that I found was interesting. He ran behind Panda Boy last time. There was a point, wasn't there, when there was a bit of a dubious Arkle year. That was the year where he was well supported for an Arkle as like a bit of a left field horse, wasn't he? I say a dubious year. It was when Gaelic Warrior won the Arkle, but still, he was supposed to be a stayers hurdle horse that year. There's more the inference in there. But he was well fancied for that. Like he's a classy horse, and it's not always necessarily a classy horse that goes and wins these races. But he's won a couple of point-to-points. I thought he ran fine behind Panda Boy after. He travelled really nicely in the race with a view that he's left Willie Mullins, gone to another yard, and that would have been the first run. So it's not necessarily that he's regressed because he's left Willie, but I mean, you probably would do. But he's gone to Pat Doyle, who knows what he's doing with his horses. But it might just be when there's a change of circumstances in the way that you do things. It's just a stepping stone to doing something, and I think it was exactly that. So him at 25 to 1's definitely very interesting. It's in the odds checker betting, but not on here. Shearer was semi-interesting as well for Paul Nicholls because I know he really tried to get things to work for that horse last year. It didn't quite pan out, but they're going to try and do the same thing again. I don't know with the qualification of him or whether he's in there, but yeah, the bigger price ones, Chemical Energy semi-interesting for Gordon, Hunter's Yarn at a big price, and possibly Shearer as well. But if I was going to have to play something at the front of the market, it would begrudgingly be It's on the Line. But with him being a bit of a monkey, Will, and he's 5-6 to 1 anti-post, I know it's only for 3 places, he could just be the really obvious each-way bet or put into those each-way multiples through the week where we talked about, like your Romeo Kulos that might place or Western Fold, because you get that place part rolling up. You don't care if he dogs it on the line because you're going to get paid the same whether he comes first or second. So I might stick him in a few multiples, but how invested do you ever get in the Hunter's Chase? And have you got any opinions for this year?
Yeah, I mean, never usually that invested, and certainly not from an anti-post perspective, unless there's something that's, kind of properly stood out in terms of a classy horse that is perhaps going to get qualified in a couple of points and things. But you have to have your ear quite close to the ground for things like that. Yeah. It's not, I've got enough on trying to figure out winners of other races at the Cheltenham Festival and on a daily basis. So I must admit, at this stage, I've had nothing on the Hunter's Chase. There are some, looking at prospective entries. We obviously don't know the full entries. There's all the usual protagonists, aren't there? So we'll go through it a little bit more in depth once we get the entries out, of course. So yeah, I'm not willing to sort of commit or put up any names at this stage, I'm afraid, Dave.
No, it's all good. But then that's the thing of it. It's definitely not a novelty race. It's the wrong word to use. But I think people don't know what I mean with in there. It's like it's a nice platform for these horses to go in there. There used to be some absolute beauts in there, wasn't it? I can't remember the green silk horse. It's going to annoy me now because I told a load of people to back it. But someone on a train told me it couldn't get beat. It was the year that Jay Mangan fell off Oscar Delta, the horse that he won at a couple of Soulsify's the one.
Yes, yeah.
It used to be a bit of that standing dish, and I remember when we backed Soulsify with that, and I told a few people to back it as well, just off the back of someone else. And then Oscar Delta was clear, and there were some people in front of us that were cheering him home. We were all like stewing a little bit, and I was thinking, I've messaged a few too many people about this Soulsify. Then when he obviously unseats and Soulsify goes in, we all just turned around and said, we probably better leave because that's got to be our luck over for the festival that year. But it can create some nice memories, and it's it's a good looking race. Victoria Pendleton rode in it as well, didn't she? It's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's where I guess I get the novelty part from because of the fact that it was a bit of a Mickey Mouse thing. But it's a good race. I'm not that convinced that I know my stuff about it. Like we've said there, if we have an opinion on it, we'll let you guys know in the column. But as it stands at the moment, a few nice names on the short list that, we've got to get that place spot up. So we've got to find the horse that's going to place in the Hunter's Chase.
That's right.
What's not involved in the place pot, Will, but is the getting out stakes, and it's such a cool race. Like the Martin Pipe is one of my favourite races of the festival. I'm so glad this is the last one because it's highly anticipated. I know the qualification rules have changed with the novices having to have their 5 runs, and as much as a conditional jockeys race, and it feels like it should be a bit of a novice race. It's a good handicap full stop. It's over the middle trip, which is ideal because you get lots of these 2 milers, 3 milers, and lots of horses that fall into the somewhere in between bracket. We've had horses that will go and win this that like have gone and run well and like won Gold Cups and stuff after. We've just seen loads of like nice horses, but with the fact that it's changed a bit, horses like Apaidanom have found themselves as favourite for this. He's had loads of runs this season. Wouldn't be a typical Skelton handicap where they keep him hiding. Apparently, we've got Rock Dino in at 10-1. We've got I Started a Joke, who's we've talked about for the county, and that more battle. He's 12-1 in here as well. Mercer again, we mentioned for the county, is also in here at 12-1. The Passing Wife's 12-1. That's been tipped up on quite a few shows. Quelle Histoire is another one that's in here. That's of course subject to a little bit of support on the machine, but there's lots of horses that are in here that are doubly, triply, quadruply entered, Will. So you kind of have to pin yourself down to one that's going to be in there. We've seen that Willie Mullins has done quite well in this race. We've seen that Langadown won this race as well. Gordon Elliott, if you go back a little while, has done all right in here. Have you got anything on your radar for the Martin Pipe? Because I've backed a couple, and there's one that I'm relatively sweet on, although it's not necessarily left field, but might take a bit of convincing. But I do think it's a horse that you quite like as well. So anything on your shortlist for the Martin Pipe?
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Indivar Blue, is that the one?
No, but he is on the shortlist.
He's entered, yeah.
But I think they've said Coral Cup for him, haven't they? An act of authority they're going to send it here instead.
Yeah. No, there's plenty. Nurse Susan's in here, so it'll be interesting if she pitches up here. But the one that I am probably the most intrigued about, because it's the only entry that he's got, and he ran 2 weeks after a really big run at Ayr. For Gordon Elliott, this was. He ran in a listed race at Punchestown behind Heads Up and Lazada Star. Heads Up could potentially be an outsider for the Supreme or Turners. Is Steed Bonnet for Gordon Elliott? Gordon Elliott's obviously got a handful of entries, but this is Steed Bonnet's only entry. He got that 5th hurdle start in to qualify. He's not even been given a county hurdle entry or anything like that, or a Coral Cup. This is his one entry for this. And Gordon, will quite often try and find 1 or 2 of those unexposed novices to plot for this race. So this looks like the race that he will potentially go for. And I think the fact that he ran him at Punchestown in that listed contest would suggest he was just trying to qualify for this. And he was weak in the market that day. And it really did, suggest of being a run that hopefully they could just get into him to qualify without giving him a hard enough race. Which is the danger, actually, isn't it, of having these, qualifying criteria now, where a lot of horses we've seen lately, they've had their 4th, 5th runs, they've almost been rushed. It goes a little bit against, what you'd want actually in terms of a general horse profile, isn't it? But anyway, that's by the by. So Steed Bonnet, I think, is a general 25-1, 20-1 shot. That would look to be the one that I'm sort of most intrigued about at this stage. But as you said, this will be a race which there'll be far more definition to it as we get the handicap weights and as other races kind of start to be declared and we figure out what's running, what's not, etc., etc. But at this stage, he's top of the shortlist, Steed Bonnet.
Oh, I like that. And when they've got the single entry, it always helps well, doesn't it? And tipping Gordon Elliott horses in a Martin Pipes, definitely no bad way to do things. He's not as bullish this year. He couldn't have Wood who beat last year. And even though I didn't particularly overly agree with him, he was right. And I luckily got her in a few bets. So again, the good thing about this preview season, isn't it, is you can keep your ear to the ground, hear other people's respected opinions, and potentially, even if you don't necessarily agree with them, if there's enough people, I guess, hyping something up, you can get on something at a certain price. He's mentioned the weights and stuff as well. Like, I think he'll be more bullish once the weights have come out. He knew Wood who's weight because she'd been campaigning in England. So when he sees the marks of these horses, he'll come out and he'll tell us. There'll be some sort of intimation, I guess, to which is the best of his string. So we are guessing, but as I say, that earlier in this, we're recording this on Monday. The weights will be out on Wednesday. Some of these markets probably would have changed depending on the figures that some are given. So Steed Bonnet could be one of those. I'm falling off a cliff potentially with this horse, but I don't think I am. But I think that Wendrock is the pipe horse. I know that I fancied him when he stepped up in trip at Leopardstown in the DRF. It was really heavy ground. It didn't quite work out. But a part of the case I was making for him there is that I believe he's a really well handicapped horse. I thought he was well handicapped for the Fred Winter last year. Well, I say I thought he was well handicapped. I thought he might sneak and get a mark of like a low 130 for it, and he got a 136. I think he got relatively spanked by the BHA handicapper last year. He was a never nearer sixth. I thought he ran really well, but he showed that he suits Cheltenham, and as far as I'm concerned, he was a bit harshly treated at that point. This season, he did go into the Grade 3 where Talk the Talk won, and he was slammed by him, but you should be slammed by a horse that's vying for favouritism for a Supreme if you're not of that standard. But that was the only time this season he's been ridden by Jack Kennedy. He's been ridden by claiming jockeys for the other few runs. His mark's slowly been creeping down over in Ireland as well. And potentially, I mean, he's running 2 listed hurdles after. It might be the case that they were trying their best in each of those races. It might be that they were just stepping stones to doing stuff. He didn't need the same qualification run as everyone else because he'd already had lots of runs. He's up to 10 hurdle runs now. But the Christmas run, which is a part of the reason why I liked him at Leopardstown, was the fact that he was not even in the pictures as they turned him for home, and then he picked off horses left, right and centre, and it was just a really eye-catching run where you think, I don't know, if it had been a bit more close to the pace, or maybe if it was a bit more of a going day, he might have been able to actually possibly even win that contest. And there was a few horses from that race that ran in the 3-mile race at Leopardstown that didn't quite pan out, but Saint Lefort was only a little bit in front of him, and he did win that race at Leopardstown. Now, when I watched the two of them again on replays after, like they're both closing in at the line at a similar rate of knots, but Saint Lefort just got first run on Wendrock. So again, not saying that's the reason why he got beat in the 3-mile race. He was just out the back. He was very disappointing. But I feel like that 2.5-mile trip, as much as I said that I think he could stay 3 miles, the 2.5-mile trip of the pipe that he ran in at Christmas probably is the distance going to suit him. With him being a 5-year-old after being a juvenile last year, you normally think they need a little bit further, don't you? So I think that Wendrock's got a really obvious profile for it. He's 25-1 top price. He's been nibbled in a few places. There's a couple of places still 20s, and there's some 16s about. If the BHA handicap is a bit kinder to him this year, which probably wouldn't happen, I think if he's off a mark of anything 136 or under, given that was the mark he ran well off in the February last year, but he is a year older horse now, I think he's going to be a fairly good bet in this. And he's 129 over in Ireland as well. So it's feasible. The normal tax is like £5, probably maybe up to 7 if they're being harsh. He might only get £2 or £3. And I think if he's off low 130s, I reckon Wendrock might end up being the horse. They've done all right as well in this race. Gigginstown, I think they've been sort of teed in with a few horses as well. It's been a while since they've actually won one, but I always see those types of horses like your Key Bourbons and things that go and get beaten it. So I'm not fully convinced on Wendrock, but when he's 25-1, he's definitely very interested in a race that there's going to be a few shorteners by the time that we put this out, probably will. So I'm definitely going with Wendrock in there. And then you fancy Steed Bonnet as the other Gordon Elliott horse. There are a couple that are probably worth sticking in people's notebooks, maybe even getting the bets on non-runner money back. Right, Will, we've come to the end. We've made it through the 4 days of the festival. I knew I'd waffle more on the Friday because I'm extra excited and we've recorded on a separate day. But I'm pleased with that. I think we've done it justice because it's a great day's racing and there's some really deep races this year, so it is exciting. Of all of that, though, Will, I'll push us for our best bets for day 4. So, again, I'm always happy to go first this one. But have you got anything that really jumps out for you?
So, slightly different angle to it because I fancy 2 quite strongly. Each way double, Minella Study in the Triumph, Haiti in the Gold Cup.
Oh, I love that. It's a cracking way to bet as well, isn't it? And especially across the 4 days, getting some of the cross doubles across a few of them. That's a cracker one. So Minella Study in the Triumph and Haiti Couleurs in the Gold Cup is a nice each way double there. I can't argue with that, Will. Again, right with the shorty type stuff, like Dino Blue, like 7-4 is mad. I think she needs to like fully get in people's books for that. So I fancy her. I am fairly sweet on Dr. Steinberg, but the question mark about whether he comes or not tempers enthusiasm slightly. But I really do think Wendrock at 25-1, if you've got a Bet 365 account, I mean, you're not going to lose it off the back of this one, but I think he's going to be a short. And I'm sure he's going to, like, he can't get more than £7. And I think when people start to latch on to the fact that his mark's just the same number as last year, even though it's a small element irrelevant, I reckon he's going to be the wise guy horse that starts to shorten up significantly for this. So I think he's going to be low double figure price, 10s, 12-1 by the time we talk about this race in a week's time. I think Wendrock's one to get stuck in the book now. So yeah, we're done. We've done all 4 days. Will, thank you so much for your time on this one. As we've mentioned a couple of times in here, there's a link in the description. All our final bets will go out on the WhichBookie website, so you'll find out everything we fancy for. I don't want to say every race of the Cheltenham Festival because we might not get a bet in every single one, but we'll do our best. I'm sure there'll be plenty of stuff we're interested in because it is the best week of horse racing that ever has existed. And this year's festival looks like it's going to be pretty special, Will. So Thank you so much for your time again, mate. Any passing words for the viewers or for myself as we get this done?
I just enjoy it, and keep an eye out for over the next couple of weeks, because there will be plenty of anti-post picks, and then obviously picks once we get closer to the final fields and the final decks, of course. So yeah, we'll try and have some kind of an angle in every race. Yeah, that'll be the intention anyway.
Awesome. And then hopefully we'll find a few winners. We'll get a few place pots up across the 4 days. But like you say, we'll just enjoy it and we'll have a good time. Hopefully, because of last year's difficult festival, I suppose it was for lots of people, and some incidents that happened this year, we're going to have a nice clean run at the slate and we're going to see the best results, the best horses doing their business, and it's just going to be a good bit of fun, isn't it? So thanks again, Will. Thank you guys at home for your support. Like I always say, drop a comment with anything to do with this video or any best bets you've got for Friday or any questions you'd like to ask. Make sure you're liking the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as Will says, keep an eye on all the social channels so you can see everything that we're talking about for the Cheltenham Festival.